back, everybody. This is Michael Levites from JurisQ.com with our participating attorney, a divorce attorney, Alla Kurolapnik. Alla, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michael.
My pleasure. And as you know, we don't just discuss legal topics. We also digest newsworthy cases, newsworthy divorces from which we can actually learn. And of course, the big item right now is in the news, our celebrity couple, ex-couple, Tom Brady and Gisele. I think it's Gisele Bündchen, that's how she pronounces it. If not, it's just, everybody knows them as Tom and Gisele, but Tom and Gisele, no mas. They have divorced, and it was done very, very quickly. There were rumors in the press about demise of their marriage. They were seen separated, and there was talk about Tom is going to file for divorce. But before you know it, news came out in October, they are divorced. So how can it be? What do you think was the instrument, the mechanism to make their divorce so fast and so smooth?
So I think part of the reason why their divorce happened so quickly was because they had an ironclad prenuptial agreement. By nature of the fact, these two have children. So inevitably, there's always going to be some kind of arrangements with respect to kids. And granted, prenuptial agreements generally in New York do not cover children, as those kind of things are unenforceable in prenuptial agreements. But I believe that because they had the majority of their financial issues worked out in a prenuptial agreement, the divorce went as smoothly as it did. And that's why I always encourage my clients, initially at least, if there are assets to protect, that they should really consider a prenuptial agreement.
Let me ask you a follow-up question. It's very interesting. Not everybody knows it and appreciates the fact that you said that issues affecting the kids are not enforceable. Is nothing enforceable? I understand maybe child support because things could change financially. But what about even the custody? Who shares custody? Who makes decisions for educational, medical needs of the child? You're saying it cannot be in a prenup agreement at all.
Well, it's not going to be enforced by virtue of the fact that you don't know what's going to happen when the children are born. And the standard in New York, at least with respect to children, is the best interest of the child. And the courts are empowered to make that decision. So either, during a divorce, couples either can decide that for themselves, but they cannot, prior to a marriage, predetermine how and who will make decisions for the children. That is something that is analyzed during the lifetime of the marriage and before a divorce happens.
That's very interesting to know. Alla, of course, you're a big proponent of mediation. This is what you practice, this is what you preach, avoiding lengthy, protracted, painful divorce proceedings, rather focusing on mediation. Do you think in this case of Tom and Gisele, there was room for mediation because things happen so fast and out of the spotlight? Usually in a divorce, you have paparazzis lining up by courthouse, you have court proceedings. Do you think mediation had a role in this celebrity divorce?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I don't necessarily think that traditional mediation may have been right for this case, but I can tell you that, and this is one of the services that I provide as well, it's attorney negotiations. So I'm pretty sure that these two had really competent, good attorneys who sat down, looked at the prenuptial agreement, and pretty much said, here's where we are. We have 90% of things worked out. Let's try to negotiate the other 10% of this. So while mediation may have been helpful if, let's say, they didn't see eye to eye for maybe some of the issues that weren't covered in the prenuptial agreement, I think with this particular couple, because they wanted to very much avoid the spotlight, so to speak, and the paparazzi and put their family through that kind of stress, I think that whoever represented them did a great job in, solidifying whatever needed to be done with respect to the children, while the finances were already dealt with, addressed with, and sort of settled, resolved in the prenuptial agreement.
Alan, people looking at watching our videos now, most are regular folk. They think to themselves, you guys are talking about Tom and Gisele. One is an athlete, a very, very high paid athlete. Second is a supermodel. They have millions of dollars between themselves. They're both wealthy and successful in their own right. We're regular people. Do you think a prenup is something that's also necessary for us? What do you think?
The more I've been practicing in this area, the more I'm a big proponent of having couples sort of just even, like any type of wage earners, right? Anybody with any type of income, just to decide how a couple, is going to lead their financial marriage, right? Because
Right.
you should have that conversation with your spouse. You should be able to discuss, are we going to open up a joint bank account? Are we going to keep our finances separate? Are we going to contribute half and half to expenses? That's a conversation to be had. So even with somebody who doesn't have, the millions of dollars that you're talking about, like Gisele and Tom, anybody
Right.
who has, first of all, prenuptial agreements are good in protecting a legacy. So if your family has money, you stand to inherit money, it's a good way to be able to carve out language that wouldn't jeopardize your siblings or other people who stand to inherit from the same pool. It's a good way to protect if you have, if this is what we call the blended marriage, a second marriage where you have children from a prior marriage, to protect their legacy, for instance,
Right.
so that there's no combat. So it's a good way for estate planning purposes for someone as well to consider. That's just part of it. The other part of it is really the best time to discuss your finances is when you're in that romantic happy stage. Nobody
Yes,
wants
thank
to
you.
discuss the finances when you're breaking up, because it just adds to the stresses of that already bitter situation. The best time that you
Absolutely.
can talk about these things is when you're in a good place, when you're looking forward to spending the rest of your life with someone, where you're making the
Right.
decisions from a very pure, realistic, level-headed way, as opposed to when you're completely emotional during a divorce and then hurt by maybe the actions of your spouse and trying to reconcile all of that with the finances. So the best thing that you can do, and because marriage is a big part of of any marriage, is finances, and how
Yes.
you're going to lead your financial life, and how you're going to support your children if you have any, how things are going to be dealt with on a day-to-day basis, because that is inherent in marriage. The best time to determine these things is when you're in a good place, prior to when you're planning it all out.
These are golden words. So important to adhere to what you're saying, because I read somewhere, and maybe you know better, because you deal with this on a practical level as an attorney, that most divorces have underlying issues that are financial, because, like you said, people have different expectations going into a marriage. Who's going to work, how, who contributes what. It's always best to discuss it and put it on paper in a prenup before actually going under the altar, so that there are
Right.
clear expectations and there is integrity in the marriage. And with that, we're going to end this session. Thank you, Al, for helping us digest the celebrity divorce of Tom and Gisele. And of course, there are lessons to be learned there for everybody, because anybody can have similar issues. And you don't have to be an athlete or Victoria's Secret supermodel to also have, unfortunately, disagreements in your marriage where you may have to resort to mediation with the help of somebody like Alla Kurolapnik, a divorce attorney. We're going to have Alla's phone number on the bottom of the screen. If anybody has any questions, you can contact attorney Alla Kurolapnik directly. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Alla. Until next time.
Thank you.